Um, okay, so here's what we're going to cover today, and I'll try to answer the questions that I saw there when they come up. Why get licensed? Very briefly, because you're all here, I think, with some intent on licensure. What's required as part of your license? I put this sentence in specifically because of all the letters. It was delightful to me. Computer-based testing. Everything is computer-based test except structural, I believe. There's an update in that there's no more EIT certification handled by the state of New Hampshire. And I'll speak briefly about that. And it got easier and more affordable. So it should be a good change. And then PDHs are professional development hours or continuing education. So what you need, what you can expect from there. I'm going to focus on the PE application package, but I will go through what it looks like to take the FE. And I will also mention the New Hampshire state regulation that outlines alternative pathways. So in New Hampshire, you do not even have to have a degree. You don't have to have taken the FE. There are pathways. You just have to have a lot of work experience to be able to qualify. Every single one of these licensure options goes through the FE or the PE exam. So there are alternative pathways, but they all end in that exam. So we will talk about the pathways, but we'll really hit on the application package and the exam itself. And then hopefully have time for Q&A. Okay, so who am I? I am a professional engineer. I'm licensed in mechanical engineering in the materials and machine design discipline. I am here representing ASHRAE, but I am not a HVAC specialist by any means. I worked 12 years in industry. So I've worked in medical devices, designing surgical tools. I worked at Ruger Firearms. That's what brought me to New Hampshire for 5.5 years. And I worked at Kudos Diapers. That was a startup that I was the lead engineer for, designing a cotton-lined baby diaper. All of these tools or jobs I mentioned because for the most part, they all could impact human health in one way or another. And licensure was never required, which I just find a little bit odd. There are many other, I'm sure you can think of many other professions that have perhaps less of an impact on human health, and they are licensed. I'll talk about this at the end, kind of why more people don't get licensed. But I just think this is interesting that engineering in the United States as a trend has gone away from licensure. And I specifically came back and took the FE, did the whole licensure process after I had worked for 12 years already. So I took the FE after I had started working at Dartmouth. I'll get into a little bit about what I do here. But basically, I help students prepare for it, and I said I should probably take it. So I studied for 2 weeks and I took it. I wouldn't recommend cramming studying into 2 weeks. It's not the easiest thing. It's a 5-hour exam. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I passed. I applied to the New Hampshire PE board a month later. I will share with you my application materials so that it is very transparent so you can kind of see what this looks like. And I was approved to test as of January. And then I took the PE exam for the first time in February. Again, I would not recommend my path. I did not pass. The PE exam is really hard. I would highly recommend that you take time, do a bunch of practice problems. That was really the difference maker. Again, I'll share some more of what worked for me and generally what is recommended. I took the PE again in December of 2023 and I passed. And I did that having a baby in June of 2023 and needing extra time to pump. And I say that all to say, if I could do it, I think you can do it. And I want to encourage you and make this as straightforward as possible. These are 5 of my reasons to try to engineer a better world and help future generations to meet their goals if that's what they want to do is licensure. Okay, so I promised I would say what I do at Dartmouth and why I considered getting the PE. I mentor student projects. I scope the projects from industry and nonprofits, and then I help students execute them. 2 of our projects I want to just bring up, NCEES, the National Council for Examination on Engineering and Surveying. They give out engineering education awards, and two of our projects in the last 2 years have won. This was an interdisciplinary project on pedestrian transportation planning using machine learning algorithm to identify what paths people take as they're on a bike or on a scooter or walking to help the town of Hanover better plan for non-vehicular transportation. And then we've also worked with the state before and won an award for mitigating PFAS, a forever chemical, out of carpet cleaning businesses. In New Hampshire, PFAS is a big problem if you look into it. And so just wanted to share, it is helpful for me to have a license in mechanical engineering specifically to help students understand the ethical implications of the work that we do and to provide authority for the work that I do. I want to share with you now, what does licensure mean, what's involved, and how is a license used? In general, this is what's involved. And I say in general because there are alternative pathways outlined in this RSA. I will copy paste this into the chat if this is something that is of interest to you. And in general, the classic pathway there is what a lot of people follow. So you get your 4-year degree. Let's see if I can chat and, okay. 4-year degree, you pass the FE, you complete progressive experience in engineering. And I say under a PE, I never personally worked with a PE as my supervisor, but I always worked with a PE. And I want to just share what that might look like for you. And then you pass the PE in your state to become licensed. So why do it? I'll go through this really quickly. Recognition, to have the PE after your name provides automatic recognition. And I would say for people who are considering the FE, having EIT after your name is a very helpful thing for job applications. Career development, you might need a license to be able to advance in your firm and with more responsibility in the projects that you do. There are laws that kind of designate who has the authority to work as a licensed professional engineer, and in some states, even just as an engineer with an engineer on your shingle in your business. So getting licensed can be very helpful with that. You have flexibility, you have a lot of opportunity. You're free to consult if you want to. You're free to work on certain projects that require a PE stamp or a license. And then again, I will share some data at the end. PEs earn more relative to unlicensed engineers throughout their career. I always share this slide because I want you to see what is defined by the law as a licensed professional engineer and what activities are defined. And this is for consumer protection. This is the general work that is considered engineering in the state of New Hampshire. Consulting, investigating, evaluating, planning, designing in connection with any public or private utilities, a structure, buildings, machines, equipment, processes, work, or projects wherein public welfare, life, health, or property is concerned. I think this is very broad, and I think a lot of people do not realize how broadly engineering is regulated, and that we can really just make sure we are covered in the eyes of the law by being licensed. You're already here with an interest to license, and I just wanted to say you're doing the right thing by considering getting licensed. Okay, so what does the application process look like? It is, number one, register with NCEES. Sign up for the FE if you haven't done that already. The second thing, study and take the FE. The third thing, progressive work experience, 4 years of full-time. And the fourth thing, what it is supposed to say is application with the state of New Hampshire. So starting, I'm just going to go through in detail now what is involved. The FE is a 6-hour exam. I said 5 hours before because it's generally 5 hours of actual test taking. They say block 6 hours of time because you have a like orientation to the computer-based test scenario and a 30-minute lunch break. So you need about 6 hours plus travel time to actually do the FE exam. It's administered year-round at the Pearson View Professional Testing Centers. The closest one in New Hampshire, depending on where you are, is Concord, or in Burlington, Vermont, in Waltham, Mass. There's several in Boston. There's a few in Maine. So you have your choice of where you take it. And if you're registering in New Hampshire, it does not matter where you actually sit the exam. It's a national exam. The exam is agnostic to location. So you can take it wherever is convenient for you. I would say just register with the PE board in the state where you plan to practice engineering, and that's true of the FE as well. The national pass rate for mechanical is about 75%, meaning about 75% of the first time test takers will pass. We don't know, NCWS doesn't publish the score that you need to achieve on the FE to pass. On the PE, what I have heard is generally 70%. So I imagine it's a similar number on the FE, but maybe they're more generous because it is a very broad exam. There's 110 questions. They're split into two halves. So you will get approximately 55 on the first half and approximately 55 on the second half. I'm going to share with you the topics that are covered on the FE exam, and you will only see a topic in each half of the exam. You will not see, like if you have math and ethics on the first half of the exam, you will not see math and ethics in the second half. They contain by the project or the topic areas. It's open book, and I'll show you an example of what the screen looks like in a computer-based test scenario. You can use an on-screen searchable FE reference, and that's the only book you're allowed to have. So you cannot bring anything into the test center other than yourself and a calculator. They will have some test aids. So if you need earplugs, if you need, most of us will make use of a notebook and a marker. They have kind of the equivalent of a dry erase board of a notebook, which you are not allowed to erase. And you have plenty of pages, generally they give you a few different markers that you can use and work your way through. And you're allowed to bring in a calculator, but only certain calculators. So I would highly recommend that you look at your calculator and see it should be a scientific calculator. Nothing fancy, like I think TI 36 is the highest that they go. If you have a TI 84 or 89, that's a no-go on this exam. But these are thankfully not too expensive. And the same exam for the calculator for the FE will work for the PE. The exam fee just went up last year. It used to be $175, now it's $225. I have a handy how-to doc for registration. Let me see if I can grab that link and paste it in the chat. That should be accessible to everyone here if you haven't already registered for the FE. And calculators are permitted. I have this asterisk on here. You just need to navigate to the NCWS FE page, and they have a window that pops up that shows you which calculators are permitted. If you can't find a calculator, they have a on-screen widget that will pop up, and I believe it's supposed to be like a TI 36. So hopefully you're not left without a calculator. Most of these, by the way, can do integrals, derivatives, matrix math, and statistics. So not too bad as far as being able to do some of that math. The exam disciplines for the FE, there's only 7. There's many, many more disciplines for the PE. And I want to say this, I'll say this for the PE as well, but it really matters for the FE because there's only 7 disciplines. Your FE exam discipline does not it doesn't have an impact on what you end up doing in your engineering practice. So if you majored in mechanical engineering, it might be a good idea to take the mechanical exam. But if it's been a while and you've been working in a manufacturing scenario, maybe the industrial is a good setup for you. Or vice versa. I can picture if you're a civil engineer, but you've been working in architectural engineering, perhaps one of these other disciplines makes more sense to you. When I send out the slides, these are all hyperlinked, so you can get to the PDF that NCWS hosts that shows you the information I'm about to share in case I don't cover what you're interested in. So these are the exam topics and the number of questions associated with them. This kind of shows you the weight that NCWS puts on each of these topical areas. You'll be asked information here All of the formula that you should need to solve anything on the FE is in the FE reference manual, which will be available to you at the exam. It's available to download from NCSS, and you can just get really good at Control F and finding the formula that you need. On the FE, on the exam, all of these should be one-step calculations, meaning they might ask you in electricity and magnetism an Ohm's law question, and you literally just need to plug in the current and the voltage, and then get out resistance as your answer. Select your answer and go. Some of these other ones for mechanical will have some pump equations, and those are all available in the reference manual. You might need to use the reference manual for engineering economics to look up the interest tables and kind of look through like, okay, do I have present value? Am I looking for a future value, et cetera? And that's all of the math is in there. It's just the challenge of this exam really is that it's broad and that you have to do quite a lot of questions in a relatively short period of time. I have a test taking strategy that I will cover after I cover the whole application process that I want you to keep in mind for managing time. I want to contrast mechanical with other disciplines. This is also very broad in the length of topics or in the types of topics that are included. Many are overlapping, but many are different, and civil is completely different. Environmental is completely different. So just make sure you look up the topics that are included there. Some of these things are common. So you'll see math, probability, ethics, economics, some kind of electrical, some kind of materials, some kind of statics and structures, and generally some kind of safety in all of these. And the FE reference manual is the same. So it's just one document for all of the disciplines of the FE exam. And so it's very large. I would not recommend printing it out. Just keep a digital copy of it when you're doing your exam prep. And know that you're going to need to search through every type of discipline when you're in the exam environment doing Control F. So I would say just try to be efficient with your time. Okay, so you take the FE, you pass the FE. I will tell you, NCSS seems to have a rhythm of sending out results on Wednesday mornings. So if you take an exam on Friday the week before, you'll probably get your results by that Wednesday. But if there's any kind of holiday or something like that, it might be a week from that Wednesday. So just recognize you'll get exam results very quickly, especially for those people who took a paper-based exam when the FE was offered much less frequently. There were maybe months between when they took the exam and when they got results, but now you can get them within 7 to 10 days, or maybe even 3 to 10 days. I always recommend that after you pass the exam, you let people know that you want to be a PE. Then you do your work and you let people know both at your job and in your professional network. And I say that because part of what you need to do for your application is get references, and you want people to be able to see the work that you're doing and comment on the difficulty and that it is progressively advancing your engineering practice. And 3 of those people must be licensed PEs. They don't have to be licensed in the state that you're applying, but they do have to have a PE license. And part of that is, I think it is just difficult for a PE board to manage all of these different disciplines. So we rely on, I say we as a practice, I'm not on the board, but we rely on the fact that others have been vetted through this same process. And if that licensed PE says that you are qualified, then I can trust that you are qualified. So networking really does matter, and try to find some PEs if they're not already in your life. Hopefully most of us work with a PE already, but it is possible to go through this process without working with a PE. I just wanted you to know. Okay, so the PE application in New Hampshire, hopefully this is answering things for many of us on this call. You apply to the PE board to be able to sit the exam in New Hampshire. This is different than some states. There are some states where it is called decoupling. Decoupling has happened, and you could take the exam for the PE right after you take the exam for the FE. That is not the case here in New Hampshire. You in an effort to help you succeed in the exam, they want to see that you have actually gotten some practice under your belt, and that you will be likely to pass because of that work experience. So there are three elements of your application in addition to having the FE. And I'll interrupt myself to say, if you're on one of those alternative pathways, there are ways to avoid taking the FE. You just need a lot more work experience, and that's in that RSA. Did I put that in the chat? Yes. Okay. Okay. So the three things that you will need for your application: a law and ethics questionnaire. And let me put that in the chat. You will need this, which you answer individually. You will need reference forms from 5 people. 3 of them are licensed. Put that in the chat. And you will also need an application detailing your work experience. Include your resume and include specific dates and project details. I'm going to share with you what mine looked like so you have an idea. Civil engineers, this is one thing where it might be very different for you. And I would defer to the people around you that have completed the PE process. The thing that I heard is that with civils, it used to be a pound of paper to be able to apply for the PE. And I just want to say I don't know if that is still the case, and I will just share what worked in my experience, which was mechanical. All of this application, just that I shouldn't say all of this. This third part of the application, detailing your work experience, as well as your references, that part is available to do through an NCWS record. And I will paste this in here. I will say I tried to do an NCWS record, and it was a little bit hard for my references to keep track of when it was applied through NCWS and when it was applied through the New Hampshire specific paper reference. I ended up sticking with the paper reference. That was a known quantity for me and for the board. But if you are doing multi-state licensure, it is highly recommended that you get an NCWS record. And that means putting all of this stuff that is required by the board into your NCWS account, so that it's very easy for another board to pull that information, and you're not having to walk through all of these things multiple times. You have your references, just do it in the NCES interface. Hopefully that's clear. My experience, again, I did with the links in the reference application through the New Hampshire Office of Professional Licensure and Certification, OPLC. But you should be able to do that with an NCWS record and that law and ethics questionnaire. Okay, so progressive engineering experience, what does this look like? So it's defined by each state, but in New Hampshire, it's 4 years. Work with or work under a professional engineer. Graduate work counts as experience. You get 1 year for a master's degree, no matter how long it took you to get that master's degree. And then the kicker is you get 1 year for a PhD, no matter how long it took you to get that doctorate. So if you went to graduate school, if you are a PhD, the most that you can get from that experience is 2 years. And then you need to have 2 additional years working as an engineer. It needs to be progressively advancing in your profession. So you need to show that you started off at one level and that you have gotten to more advanced level with your work. And I would be very specific in what you're detailing and the technical work that went into it. Treat this as kind of like a really long form version of your resume. I want to share with you my PE application submission, and I will put this in the chat too. I will say, please don't steal my identity. I don't think there's anything that is uniquely identifying on here, but I wanted it to be very clear of this is what worked for me. And I had been in industry for 12 years, so please don't compare. Like, this is a lot of experience. I was overqualified to sit the PE exam from this perspective. So I don't want you to feel intimidated if yours is shorter than mine. It should be if you only have the 4 years of experience. But this is kind of what I included. So in my first job at Ethicon, I was working in these types of roles, using these types of engineering tools. Here's the specific things that I did on each project. Here's some of the engineering skills that I gained working on these projects. And additionally, now that I'm at Dartmouth, I wanted to put forward a time allocation. So this is showing like 40% of my time in project management, 40% in teaching, 20% in administration, just so that you can see what I put in and what worked. You need to have this add up to 4 years of cumulative full-time work. It should not be just, oh, I've been graduated for 4 years, therefore I'm qualified. Make sure that you can show that you did the equivalent of a full-time role for 4 years. And then once that app is submitted, the PE board has to review your work and then recommend you to sit the exam. This can take anywhere from 1 to 3 months for them to do that review, especially in the winter. Sometimes they cancel the meetings if it is snowy or dangerous to drive. So just be full of grace with them as they schedule that and get you reviewed. They may return your application to you and say, we need to have more clarity on this. Please get more experience in this, etc. That's a possibility. But let's just assume you get authorized. And then once you're authorized, you're able to go back into NCWS and register for the PE exam. There are 22 at my count disciplines of PE exam. So you can get very specific. I think there's 5 different civil disciplines. And then for mechanical, there's 3 different disciplines. So that's HVAC, which I think will apply to many of us on this call, materials and machine design, which is what I did, MDM. And then there's also thermal fluid systems. So that would be more of like the engine designers. And those exams, the most popular ones, civil, electrical, environmental, mechanical, chemical, those are offered year round. And you, if you're in one of the other disciplines that's less frequent, it's offered only once a year in October. I will say you are allowed to sit the exam once per quarter. So if you do not pass, you cannot immediately take the same exam. I think that is because they have a limited question bank that they draw from, but you can take it up to 3 times in the state authorization that you have. And you can take it every 3 months, essentially, and until you pass. Each half of the exam is 40 questions for the mechanical. There's 80 questions total. I think for civil structural, it's double that. But don't quote me on that. The exam is designed to be practice oriented. It used to be that there was breadth in the morning and depth in the afternoon, and that is no longer the case. It is anything, any potential topic, and they have the same list of discipline-specific topics for, as they did for the FE, they have that for the 22 different disciplines of the PE on the NCWS page. There are state-specific and discipline-specific exam and license requirements. So just make sure if I haven't covered what might be required for you, that you take a look at it. And then I always recommend that you register for the exam in the state in which you wish to be licensed. Like, what's your primary operating state, and apply to that board. And then once you have your PE license, maybe use your NCWS record to apply to additional boards as needed. Okay, now we're down to the exam. So you've done your application. You're eligible to sit the exam. The best way to prepare for the exam is practice problems. And I'll talk a little bit about potential courses that you could take, but I want you to see this is generally what the test environment looks like in the computer-based testing. It is the exact same test environment for the FE and the PE, different reference manuals. So the reference manual will vary by that overall discipline. So civil engineering will have all 5 of the civil disciplines into one reference manual, mechanical, all of them into one reference manual. And again, that's a very large reference manual, so you need to get very good at Control F. This is an FE exam question and reference manual example, but it will look the same no matter which discipline you're in. You have the reference manual that will be pulled up on the left half of your screen, and you have one question at a time on the right half of your screen. And then you have buttons that show previous, next question, and flag. I'll go through some recommendations for you here, but you should just in general do a couple efforts of visualizing what this exam environment will look like. Visualize yourself sitting at a computer and working through this using that kind of like a whiteboard, notebook, paper to create your test environment. I always recommend that you visualize this so that the first time you're actually sitting for the exam, you don't waste a lot of your intellectual energy on orienting yourself. Let this be kind of an orientation. Know that you're going to have the reference manual on one side with the Control F option. There will be a search bar up at the top that you can type into, and you're going to have your question one at a time on the right side with these buttons, and that's all you're going to do. And you'll be able to select A, B, C, D on the screen and then move on. Okay. Practice exams are the best, practice problems are the best way to prepare for an exam. I always share the Dartmouth's campus president. She's a psychologist by training and has written a book called Choke, which is all about how not to choke under pressure. Her take, and this is a link, I think I also have that here that I can share in the chat, just to justify like the science behind practice problems being a really good plan to do. And then also I found very helpful the subreddit on the PE exam, and I'll put that in the chat as well. There's just a lot of information shared there about prep methods, where they found the most helpful references, etc. And disclaimer that I am not at all responsible for any language that comes up on Reddit. There are some special kind of people that lurk there, but I did find it very helpful on this particular subreddit. I ended up the second time I took the PE exam doing a prep class. I did Dr. Tom's classroom, but any of these would be good. It's expensive, but I did not want to fail a second time. And I didn't have a ton of time with 5 kids and a full-time job to spend collecting resources. If you are a budget-conscious person, you can succeed on this exam by buying some practice exams and working your way through them. Prep books are also not that expensive compared to the cost of prep class, but I would recommend, I in general, had a really great experience with exam prep. It was probably 40 hours of time the second time versus I think I crammed 15 hours into 2 weeks part-time studying the first time I tried, and it was not successful. Like you really just need to get into the frame of mind of what is the practice, what do the problems look like, and practice going through what's the exam trying to show you with each of those problems. It is a speed kind of challenge when you're taking these FE and PE exams. So with that in mind, the other tactical element I want to share with you, I learned in my prep class, and that is the 3-pass method. This works on the FE, it works on the PE. It helps you do time management. So I shouldn't have said A. The first pass is that you answer right away. So if you see a question and you look at it and you say, I know how to do this, do it. If you see a question and you look at it and you say, I think I know how to do this, but it's going to take me a few minutes to answer it, answer B, and then hit that flag button in the upper right of the right side of the screen where the question is. And I additionally marked it on my notebook where I had a column that said B's, things that I was going to go back to. And then if you look at a question and you say, I've got no idea how to answer this, mark it C, flag it, mark it in your C column in your note page, and then move on. So like the first time you go through a question, it should take you less than a minute to do each question. You have to go fast, and you're categorizing it either answer right away, B in flag, or C in flag. So that's the first pass. The second pass is that you go through all of the questions that you flagged, which at the end, once you get through all of the questions in that half of the exam, you can look at a review page and see which ones are flagged. Or you can look at your notes page and see, okay, I put these in the B column. Go back through and do all the Bs. That's your second pass. It should be relatively quick. You know how to do them. Maybe even your subconscious was thinking about it as you were going about that whole half of the exam. And that should be a very quick go back through and answer with your real answer, not just B. And then if you still have time before the amount of time that is halfway through the test has passed, go back and do some of the Cs. answer them with your real answer. But the way that the 3-pass method works is if you don't get to that third pass, you have still answered everything on that half of the exam, and it gives you a lot more of a chance to get more points. There's no partial credit. There's no like the SAT where they give you harder questions if you get these right. That doesn't apply on the PE. It is just credit or no credit. There are some questions that are alternative item types that are not going to be multiple choice. And those are also, you either get it or you don't. And those might be that you are to force rank hardness of materials or slope of stress strain chart. And those ones, again, like you got to get it all right or not. But I would still flag those if you are finding that you don't know how to answer them right away, and categorize them in your mind or on that note paper as either a B question that you know the answer to, you just need a little bit more time, or a C question where you have no idea. There's very few alternative item type questions, but you should know that they do exist. Not every single question on the PE is A, B, C, D. Okay, so let's say you pass your exam. You are licensed. In New Hampshire, you need to do 30 hours a year of continuing education and submit that through. They have a new system that OPLC is trying to run. The Office of Professional Licensure and Certification is trying to run for all professions that you can use or not. Then that's, I think, it's still up for debate on the engineers board. You can use NCWS to track your continuing ed, and continuing ed can look like that you're doing a class on your own, that you're doing lunch and learns, that you're coming to New Hampshire ASHRAE meetings, and New Hampshire Society of Professional Engineers meetings, and recording those hours. You'll find it's actually, once you're looking for it, it's not too hard to do 30 hours a year. I want to say that licensure is a little different than a driver's license, where driver's license, if you get your license in New Hampshire, it is recognized in a reciprocity form in every other state in the United States. That is not true of engineering licensure. Just because you have it in New Hampshire does not mean that it is recognized in other states, and that you actually need to have a license in each state that you're practicing, and that is comity. So that is that you need, basically, if you have met the demands of New Hampshire, most other states will say good, but you need to go through our process too. You won't need to start again with the exam. The exam is good for life. You take it, you pass it, you're done. But you will need to consider getting an NCWS record if you're planning on doing many states, because then your references only have to do it the one time into NCWS's system, and then every state recognizes their system and their record. I always like to say this, all 50 states restrict the title of professional engineer to licensed individuals, and there are 27 states that restrict the title of engineer to licensed individuals. New Hampshire is not one of them, but I showed you the RSA that New Hampshire does follow, and quite a lot of our work is considered engineering, and therefore it falls under that RSA to be licensed. There are a lot of states that require that firms who are contracting with public entities have a certain percentage of company owners who are PEs. So in general, if I haven't convinced you that this is hard, but it's worth doing, I hope that you consider doing it, just because it leaves so many opportunities for you open. And I always ask this question too: why are there not more PEs? Like, how was I, as an engineer, allowed to build surgical tools, guns, and diapers, which babies spend 3 years of their lives, up to 3 years, in contact with their skin? None of those things required a license, and part of that is because the U.S. has tended toward this industrial exemption. So many state laws, and New Hampshire is included, indicate that you don't necessarily need to have a license to practice engineering if you are working with a company that is willing to take on the liability for you working as an unlicensed engineer. The NSPE is the National Society of Professional Engineers. Their stance is very clearly pro-license. And I think they're looking at, from like many different engineering disasters, what would have happened if there had been licensed engineers who have this kind of ethical backstop to make sure that they have to sign off on things a certain way, versus this is the Institute for Chemical Engineering, ACHE. They are very pro industrial exemption. And so I can see it both ways, but I would highly encourage, especially if you have opted into this call, that you consider getting licensed. It is, again, that backstop on ethical behavior. You can say to anyone who is asking you to do if it fits, it ships, or just sign off on it. You have that stance that you have signed on to. I am going to practice ethically. I am going to behave in this manner, and I'm going to continue to invest in my career. Having a PE license gives you opportunity to talk to your employer to say, like, I need to go to this continuing education opportunity because it's required for my license. There's many, many, many more reasons to consider getting licensed, but I hope I've given you a taste of just a few. And yeah, so as promised, here's the money slide. This is now 3 years old, but this is from NCWS, that people who have their license over their career end up getting paid a decent amount more. And I think there's no reason to think that this trend would change from 3 years ago. I want to give you, before I open up to Q&A in the chat, I want to give you just a heads up that there's a few different things going on related to professional engineering, and I'll put these in the chat too. So ASHRAE has an event next month, and they will have another one on STEM outreach in March. You can follow them on LinkedIn, or if you go to that link in the chat, that's where they have all of their meetings. And then if you are looking to network with potential PEs and start that part of your career, anyone who is at all an engineer, whether you're licensed or not, is welcome at this event. If you are saying there's a financial hardship for you to attend this event, please get in contact with me and we'll talk about it. But this is a really great opportunity to do some continuing education. There's 3 hours of PDH during the afternoon, and then a banquet to talk about and celebrate engineering in New Hampshire. There's a guest speaker who is an author of several different texts on engineering topics in STEM, and I think he'll have a good perspective. But overall, it's just a nice way to connect with people. It's, I think, the only time that we do it in the state of New Hampshire for all disciplines. I think there's specific discipline meetings that happen more frequently, like ASHRAE's every month, but the NHSPE is really the one that happens once a month or once a year, and it's always Engineers Week in February. All right, so now I will stop sharing. I will get into the chat. I think I see that there are some questions that have already been asked and answered. And then I'm happy to answer questions. Okay, so I see one from Jacob to start with. To clarify, some of the questions you will answer and not review on the first pass. Yes, so going back to that 3-pass method, what you're trying to do is just very quickly engage your brain and get an answer down on paper, and then limit the amount of time you spend on each question. So the first pass is, can I answer it quickly? If I can, then just answer it. In that same first pass, if you couldn't answer it quickly, and you need a bit more time, but you think you could answer it, that's when you mark B, make a note of it, the number of the question, and flag it. And then you want to, if you don't know how to do it at all, mark it C. But that way, that very quickly you're getting an answer for every problem, getting through that first half of the exam, and you're giving yourself the potential for the most points. There are questions that you will answer and not review that you get through on that first pass because you just have no idea how to do them, and you might run out of time to go back and spend time on that C category of, I don't know how to do it, I'm not going to answer it right now. Ryan says, can we not apply until we have 4 years of work experience, or can we apply but not take the exam? I think if you do not have 4 years of work experience, they will not approve your application, and you'll just have to apply again. What you probably could do is, if you wanted to start a little early, before you have the 4 full years, is start getting your recommendations and start doing them through NCWS. And that, I think, could be a fair way to get a jump on the the application. And I think you can also start sending them, if you don't want to do the NCWS record, you could send them the paper version that I sent the link to in the chat, and just get them started. But it also takes a decent amount of time for you to build up that list, the detailed list of work experience that you have. So I'd get started on that right away and just be ready to go when you hit your 4 years of full-time equivalent. Okay, so I see, will you be sharing? Yes, I will share the slides out. I think we're going to have a list of either attendees or people who registered. And we will have this webinar recorded and posted to the ASHRAE website. So we will make sure we send out both of those. The goal here is that we're sharing information, so I want to make it relatively straightforward for you to see and share this information. What is the main difference between civil structural and structural? Is one more advantageous than the other in industry? I don't know the answer to that. So I will have to defer that one. I'm sorry, Sam, that I can't answer that more clearly, but somebody at the New Hampshire State Professional Engineers Banquet will be able to answer that. So if you wanted to, that's a plug, if you wanted to come to that, there are definitely structural engineers there who will be able to answer that. And we have, I would say, if you search New Hampshire structural engineers, there is a very active subgroup that will be able to tell you. And I think it is the New Hampshire Society of Structural Engineers. They've been at multiple conferences that I've attended, really friendly people, and they'll be able to answer your questions. I'd recommend reaching out to some of those individuals. Jacob asked, do we have to register and formally express that we are working under a PE? I am currently, but wondering if I need to tell the VTPE board in order to start accruing my time. The board will track your progress by what you submit to them in the application. No one is continuously reviewing your application now. The only reason I say that you should consider letting people know that you want to take the exam is for the recommendation part of your application. So again, in New Hampshire, you have 3 parts of your application: ethics questionnaire, the references, 5 of them, and 3 of them need to be PEs, and then your application that shows your work experience and that you've been progressively advancing your engineering practice. So all of that gets submitted after you have, I would highly recommend that you submit it after you have your 4 years equivalent, so that you are eliminating reasons for the board to push back your application to you. You know that in New Hampshire, and I think it's the same in Vermont, but you'll want to look that up. But you know that your application is going to have 4 years. So make sure it does before you submit. And the board only tracks your progress by what you submit to them. So that's an honor system situation. Okay, I did 40 hours of PE prep with Dr. Tom's classroom. I did not do separate hours of study. I made sure I worked through a practice. They had a practice exam, and then I got an NCWS practice exam, and I did both of them. So I ended up doing, the second time when I was successful in the PE exam, a decent amount of studying. I watched videos and I did practice problems on different topics. So this binder that's right here in my background is my prep material. It's a huge amount of material that they give you. And I worked through each of those. It was maybe like a 16-week program, maybe 12. And I worked through it faster than that, just because I happened to have a lull in my work and personal responsibilities. And so I was able to do that, but I would say it was 40 hours cumulative, where probably 10 hours of that was taking practice exams, just trying to be very efficient. And then I've heard of PEs who study for 150 hours. I think that's up to you. If you're the type of person that you need to check box through a certain number of hours or a certain number of prep classes, prep exams, etc., then set aside the time to do that. I was going for, do I feel confident this time around? Am I able to answer the questions that I see on these practice exams? And so it ended up being only about 40 hours for me. Recommendations Lena says, recommendations in NCWS expire after 5 years. I recommend getting started on the work experience before getting recommendations in. Okay, that's great to know. Because again, I didn't do the NCWS record. So just be aware that your references in NCWS will expire. So yeah, get started working on your work experience to make it really detailed. Um, okay, so then, and it does say, okay, thanks, Lena. So it says they have to show as current within a year as a reference to be submitted to a PE board. And Jacob asked to clarify again, you'd recommend getting started on a My NCWS record right away. I personally would, only if you're intending to do a multi-state licensure. So if you think you might move, or if you think your firm might ask you to practice in Vermont and New Hampshire, or Vermont and New York, it might be worth doing the NCWS record for that reason specifically. If you think you're only ever going to be in New Hampshire, it's very straightforward to just send all of the documentation through New Hampshire. Something that I wanted to share, and I'll share verbally and answer any questions that people have about it. There is no longer an engineer in training certification through the state of New Hampshire. This is something that I have emails from the state OPLC administrator. Let me just read to you what was specifically agreed to on this. So NCWS will provide proof of passing the exam to the applicant, and that applicant can call themselves an EIT. There is no longer a need to apply to the state of New Hampshire until you're ready to apply for a PE. So there is no longer an EIT certification in New Hampshire. Many states apparently are doing this to just make it simpler for them to do record keeping. You don't need to have any kind of continuing ed to get your EIT and to keep your EIT. So they were just having to maintain records of many, many, many people who they never heard from again. And EIT in New Hampshire is actually not a regulated certification. It's not in the law. So the PE is what is regulated, and that is what the OPLC is going to start serving exclusively. So for any EITs in your life, just let them know if they have a certification number, great. But if they haven't already applied to get an EIT, you won't be able to find an application for it at all with the state of New Hampshire. If you really want a certification for it, you can apply through a different state, take the exam. It's the exact same exam. And then a different state like Massachusetts will gladly take your money and give you an EIT certificate. But I think New Hampshire's doing people a favor by not charging you for this thing that really is just about the exam. Again, like to be an EIT, you just have to pass the exam. You don't even have to have gotten your ABET degree. Okay, so I would like to do one more thing before I know we're at time. What I would love to do is just to hear from you any feedback. If you need to jump, I fully get it. But I would love for you to just, the same way that you asked what you want to get out of this webinar, I would love to just hear from you. Any feedback you have, future webinars you'd like to see, whether it's ASHRAE or NHSPE do, and anything else that we can help with. Would love to have your feedback on there. And while you're doing that, I will see if I can answer this question. To update letters of recommendation and NCWS record, it is simple. Click to update and easily refreshes through your contacts, or is it requiring a complete do-over for them? And then Maddie asked, if I'm not mistaken, you need an ABET degree or anticipated soon in order to sit for the FE exam. You do not. We have a person from the New Hampshire PE board come and give a lecture at Dartmouth each year to students. And he literally said this year, anyone off the street can take the FE exam. You're just not always prepared to pass it. So your ABET degree really sets you up for which pathway of application are you. So if you have an ABET degree and you pass the FE, you only need 4 years of experience to sit the PE. Are PhD holders exempt from the FE exam? No. So you would still need to sit the FE or have more years of experience, and that's that RSA 310 kind of outlines the years of experience that you need. If you don't want to take the exam and you don't have an ABET degree, it's like 20 years of experience of progressively difficult engineering experience. If you have no degree and you take the FE, it's I think 10 years. But again, look at the RSA to give you that. But there's no There's definitely no exemption from the PE. And then the FE exemptions, it's just a lot of time of working. And remember, PhD only counts as 1 year of full-time equivalent engineering for practice. So it's a little rough in that way. Let's see if I can keep answering questions, assuming that we're not getting shut down because it's after 4. Okay, so why did you get an ABET degree? Because there's many other reasons that you want an accredited degree, but you need an ABET degree, again, to get on that faster track to the PE. If you don't have an ABET degree, you have to show many more years of work experience. So Jacob, I hope that helps you. It is still the fastest path to get you to a PE, but anybody can sit and take the FE. Yeah, and then to get an EIT, Derek says in certain states you need an ABET degree or years of experience. Maybe that is true. Certain states might regulate that. In New Hampshire, you don't need any of that. You just have to have passed the exam and you're an EIT. Yeah, so Ashley, correct. Without ABET, it takes longer to get the PE. Okay. Yeah, helpful, I hope. And then if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. This is my email. It is just a personal mission of mine that I make it a lot more straightforward to find people or to help people find their way through this process. So Maddie asks, has this changed recently? An ABET degree was one of the requirements. Potentially. But I have an email, the OPLC email that I read to you was from November 17th of 2023. So at least in New Hampshire, it has been that you don't need an ABET degree to be an EIT since at least then, November 2023. I'll read that again. It was NCWS provides proof of passing the exam to the applicant, and that applicant can call themselves an EIT. No need to apply to the state of New Hampshire until you have met the requirements for the PE. And what I have advised students is that they maybe need to be educators to people. If you're doing a job application and they're asking for your EIT certification, you might just consider putting in XYZ123 and then an asterisk and putting a note that says the state of New Hampshire does not issue EIT certifications, but here's my NCWS record. There is a page that if you log into the dashboard, the my NCWS dashboard, once it says pass on your FE, you can click through and there's a link that's a permanent link. You can send it to whoever to verify that you passed the FE. And that's really, in the state of New Hampshire, that's all that they have said you need for an EIT. And again, the ABET degree is worth it because it qualifies you for a few different jobs, but then also sets you up on the fast path to the PE. All right. I see there are a couple of questions on the Q&A tab. Does New Hampshire accept an engineering technology degree? I think probably they would. I would say that that's worth an ask. Our board members, you can find who they are on the OPLC page. Let me see if I can find that quickly. And they have been unanimously really great to speak with. So I would recommend that you find these folks on LinkedIn and that, so let's see, let me put this in response to you and you might ask them. But I have to believe they would accept because I think it says in the RSA ABET degree or equivalent. And if you're able to argue the point of like an engineering technology degree, it's ABET is just for an engineering technology experience and that you're working in that field, I think that should count. But that's up to the board. Would non-PE at comparable references count? Potentially. Again, I think that's a question to ask the board. So that was Adam. I would recommend that you network and ask internationally, does this count as a PE? Worst case is they just count as one of your 5 references and you still need to find 3 licensed PEs, and that I wouldn't think that would hurt. If you want to reach me, here is my email, Christopher, and I am happy to correspond about this. And Does pre-graduate full-time professional work experience count toward the total? If it is engineering relevant, yes. It's just that you need to make sure you're doing that full-time equivalent and make it show that you are progressing in your engineering discipline. Yeah, totally, Derek. Having a degree should help you understand what you're doing on the FE. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with me longer. Again, please reach out if you have questions. Sorry, I missed that Q&A tab. You were totally right. I am not a Teams native, so I'm having to figure some of this out as we go. Sorry about that. Hopefully everyone was able to hang out so I could answer your question here. I think I got everybody. All right. Feel free to reach out to me. And also, I hope to see you at some of these upcoming events. I'm try to be pretty active on throughout the state, and hopefully this is helpful for you. Have a great evening and a great weekend.